how does a spiritual situation like bad relationships among people, how does it materialize into a virus, into a disease?
Look, I think that we already have to understand that we're living in a world which is global and integral, and that we're influencing our world, and the world is influencing us on different levels. Thoughts, desires, actions, different kinds of relationships, and it's all the same. It is all related to the good relationships between people and between all parts of nature in general. If on the levels of the still, the vegetative, and the animate that we live in, they have a certain program of how they behave in a certain way, then there you can't do anything. That's nature. And so you can't blame the wolf for catching a deer. But if we're not on the level of a wolf, but on the human level, we have to think, how do we treat each other? We were really given an entire method of how to treat each other, to help each other, helping each other and being courteous toward one another, being good toward each other and also towards nature, how we have to protect it and arrange it and everything. If we relate to the still, vegetative, animate, and especially toward other people correctly, if we'll treat them correctly, then in return we'll also see the correct response. And then, of course, we won't get any kind of harm from nature. Not on the level of viruses and not on other levels like the outbursts of volcanoes, earthquakes, tsunamis, and so on.
But how do bad relationships among people turn into diseases, into viruses, into bacteria, into even more remote, into earthquakes? How do they go from one level to another?
I can't show it corporeally, but we see that in different religions, beliefs, different kinds of relations and relationships. All nations speak about this, that one way or another, it's all about the connection between people, between man and the still, vegetative, and the animate, the environment that he lives in. And they're not talking about how wolves treat their environment, or bears, or elephants, and so on, but how human beings treat the still, vegetative, animate, and other people. And we have to see that probably our attitude, and when I say our attitude, it's on different levels. It's in thought, speech, action, the different forms in which we're interconnected. So we've reached a state where our entire world is very pressured by our relationships, and we only want to benefit off each other. No one's thinking that we have to arrange a good world with good relations for everyone, that will have a good attitude toward each other. The entire situation is becoming very competitive, and by that, of course, we awaken all the laws of nature that are beneath the human level, that these are the levels of viruses, different animate levels, and even because the system of nature is a single system. It's one system. As it says that everything comes from the still, just like we have developed from the still. from elementary particles that are still, and a greater and more complex connection between them, we come to different substances and laws that connect between them and different states about which we can say that they already are psychological. Because all in all, who are we? We are a collection of elementary particles, only that the connection between them is one that is already done in such a way that we start seeing in this form of connection a higher level of behavior than just electrons, protons, and so on. But that they already have forms of connection like neurons and transmission of orders between them, but it's the same nature at its very basis. Meaning there's no difference between the still vegetative, the animate, and higher levels, higher degrees, but all in all, it's the form of relationships between those elementary particles from which everything's made up of. And therefore we have to understand that unless we correctly relate to our nature, both in terms of both on the corporeal level and also on the levels of the thought and desire, which, let's call it spiritual, will harm all other levels.
They're made of the same material.
Yeah, because it's one system. We can't divide it. But of course, everything is interconnected.